That's the voice of opera and bolero singer Jose Iniguez. He is also the founder of a nonprofit called Encanto Arts. Coming up, we're going to talk with Jose about his unconventional journey from the fields of Mattawa, Washington, to achieving his dream of becoming an opera singer. Hello and welcome again to Chino Y Chicano.
I'm Matt Chan, the Chino.
I'm Enrique Cerna, the Chicano. Well, how do you become an opera singer when you are one of 11 kids in a farm worker family that lives in a trailer home in central Washington? Well, in the case of Jose Iniguez, it's through perseverance, the support of his brothers and sisters, and taking the advice of a German tenor. Well, Matt, this is a story that you and I can relate to because we went into a business, television industry.
Oh, yeah.
There were very few people like us. So, and this is what Jose Iniguez is doing, but also he just is doing it in a whole different way. He's doing it his way.
That's what's so crazy. I mean, I can't think of another profession that is so white. I mean, let's face it, opera. I mean, European based, just white. But there's been a number of, brown kind of opera stars that are celebrated for their skill and their artistry. But it's hard to get, it's got to be brutal to get into it.
Right.
But, he's figured out a way to do it his way, and he's succeeding. That's what's so cool.
Yeah. And the way he's done it is also serving communities of color, serving people in rural areas through his nonprofit. And it's all part of trying to achieve a dream that he's had from the time he was a young man. So it's a very fascinating story. So let's take a listen to this conversation with Jose Iniguez. As we speak, you're getting ready to take off for Mexico and to do some performing there. So tell me about that.
Colima City, so the state of Colima, and I'll be performing with the State Symphony, led by conductor Miguel Ángel Alatorre Alvarez, and performing alongside with soprano Mariana Silva, who is professor of voice at the University of Colima Bellas Artes. So very, very, very cool company that I'll be with in regards to the music world in Colima. So it's very cool. And what's fantastic is they'll be performing all my repertoire, the arrangements that I came out with for 2023-24. I had the amazing experience in performing it with the Wenatchee Symphony on the 23rd of September, and then also some of it with the Northwest Symphony last Saturday, which was just an amazing showing. So I get to have another shot at the music, and anytime you get more and more, it can be better. You can sound better. You're just more relaxed. And it's just another opportunity.
So is it going to be a combination of opera and bolero?
It will.
Okay.
Yeah. And also I'm going to mix it up with some Leonard Cohen and some as well. I got
some classics, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I think, that's the point of being a Chicano, born in this country. I also got the love of Western music, and especially U2, a big factor that I listen to. And as a person who produces concerts, I get to request and get arrangements done to symphonies. And so one of the big things of why I'm getting more collaboration from conductors is because I come with my own libretto, where the music is arranged for every single instrument in the symphony. And
wow.
if you're in that world, that's the biggest problem is getting music arranged for all the instruments.
So is opera big in Mexico? I mean, I know Europeans and Americans. I mean, that's sort of opera is their thing. Is it big in Mexico? And how many people of Mexican origin are actually in the opera game?
Sure. So how they treat opera and classical in Mexico is they treat them as academic. So it's interesting for us when we talk about arias and instrumentals, classical. We say it aria, right? We actually say what we're going to perform. Over there. They say, oh, you're going to do something from academia. To answer the question on just how much opera, so there are pockets where it's actually very popular. So Mexico City is one. You can go to an opera in Mexico City. They have the season just like everywhere else. What's interesting about Colima is they are trying to get more towards that. They are beginning to have more consistent operas through the University of Colima. And so it seems what I've seen in my performances there, this is my third year performing in Mexico with a symphony or an orchestra. I see it growing over there. I see more musicians. It's prevalent in high school to study orchestra. It's prevalent in the college level, the university level, and there's just a lot of interest from kids.
So how did this come about, the Mexico thing?
So I got a call from the city of Pasco, the economic development director. Yeah, just called me.
The cultural center of Washington.
Yeah, I know.
Of Central Washington.
Yeah, right. So he called me and he said, they said that, we are looking to have a kind of brother sisterhood type of relationship with the state of Colima, that they've been researching it because in this area, majority of the Latino population come from Colima. So they had said they're making committees or basically areas of interest that they would like to start exchanging with the state of Colima. And so one of them was arts and culture. And so they had said, because they've seen my productions or just videos and stuff online, and through some references of people that have went to a show of mine, that they said that I would be the perfect person to help them establish this relationship with the state of Colima.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And so when they did that, I went on a delegation trip with the mayor at that time and city council. And then we went to do the first visit. And it was literally the winter of 2019.
Wow.
That winter. Yeah. And then, of course, the pandemic hit in February of 2020. But I continued just to do shows in Mexico during the pandemic. So I continued the exchange on my own, and of course with Encanto Arts supporting that.
Colima is where in Mexico? What part of Mexico?
It is south from Jalisco, so Puerto Vallarta and Jalisco. So it's literally the next state down.
Mm-hmm.
South from Jalisco.
So how did you? I mean, you weren't always in the opera, right? I mean, you've had other lives and careers. So what is the evolution? I mean, what is your roots and how did you end up here?
Yeah. How does a guy go from Mattawa, Washington, being from a farm labor family to becoming an opera singer? You're pursuing a dream, really.
Totally. Yeah. Trust me, it was a dream that that was against my father's wishes for surely. So I think that it starts there. When you're a kid, I think when you're a kid, when someone's telling you can't do something, I think.
Well, what did your father want you to do?
He wanted me to be in business or be a teacher. Something practical, doctor, lawyer, or something that would pay the bills, right?
Like I said, you came from a migrant farm worker background. Yes. you're one of, and what number are you in the family of 11 kids?
11. I'm the seventh.
You're the seventh. Okay. And all of you have gone on, of those 11 from that background, are college graduates. And
Correct.
tell me about what kind of professions the others are in.
Sure. So they're in public administration. So work for like LNI or others are city planners. So they're engineers. Others are actually doctors. One of my brothers, one of our youngest brothers, he's a medical director. And teachers, principals. I've got a couple principals, counselors as well, high school counselors, and then entrepreneurs. I have a brother who owns like 3 physical therapy clinics, and he's a physical therapist. But hey, he wanted to own them, and he does, and he does really well. But so yeah, and then yeah,
a bunch of underachievers, right? Right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think our family gatherings where they set up that, because it was always, as a young person in the seventh, I always was hearing the stories of my older siblings and what they were doing, or what they were studying, what was happening at college. So they would talk about these experiences. And I think that really transcended down to me, because, for example, like travel, my sister, when she went to the Peace Corps, at first we thought, she was crazy. You're going to Africa? So everybody, and, that was just totally left field. And then when she did that, that spurred my interest of travel, of this world. And my first, corporate job out of college was working for Holland America Cruise Line. So I worked for that industry for 17 years. So, but music was my first education when I got out of high school. So I decided to study music, and I didn't speak to my dad for 2 years. And then after about 4 and some years, once I was in there, and they told me, well, do you want to be a teacher, music teacher? And I go, no, not really. Go, well, this is about, you want to be a teaching degree, is pretty much you go into music and you finish it. So I decided to transition and get a business management, finish that with that degree.
But your dad basically said he wanted all of you to get an education, and that was a big deal to him.
Oh, huge deal. He would make your life miserable if you did not, and he knew ways of doing it.
And by the way, he just passed away recently, and our condolences about that. But he lived a long life. Obviously, had an impact on you.
Yeah, no, he really did. I was so glad to have someone of his character. The week before he passed, he was still holding me accountable, and so I think that really demonstrated the character who he was, and what he instilled in us, and always making sure that you're accountable. I think that was his biggest thing to us, and accountable to the community, because we really try, if we can, to help. The way our father was, every time you came home, if you weren't in school, then he would question you a lot. So he would make you uncomfortable, where you would see the other siblings not getting a bad time. Well, because they were in college, right? They were pursuing something. So, like I said, he made it very uncomfortable if you weren't pursuing anything. He wasn't very, how do you say, compassionate person. You were always looking for his love. I know a lot of us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people of a certain generation of immigrant roots. That's the story, right?
It really is, and he portrayed that 100%. And so,
okay, so you worked for Holland Cruise Lines for 17 years. Then what? I mean, how did you get?
So it's interesting. I used music when I was growing up, when I didn't understand things. when I was upset.
Like how?
Like,
what do you mean?
For example, growing up, it was hard to kind of have friends. I really couldn't have friends who were from Mexico because they just called me a gringo, or they called me, they didn't, I wasn't Mexican enough, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I've been there, done that.
Right,
So,
right.
so you don't fit, so you don't fit
yeah,
in.
yeah. If you're
Yeah.
Mexican American, you're either not American enough, and you're
Right.
not Mexican enough, and so it's like confusing.
It's
Yeah.
confusing, very confusing, and so I that was difficult. I didn't really have many friends who were Latino when I grew up, or Mexican, because they just made fun of me. And so, you're a kid. I mean, you're kind of like, in a way, you always kind of go the least resistance. But what helped us is we were very focused in, athletics as well. So that helped to, those frustrations and keep you busy as a kid, and also develop some relationships, being good at sports. We were all really good. We wanted to be really good at football, basketball, and I think that helped us being athletic in there. And then, of course, me for choir, that allowed me to also have a relationship with other students. Well, at that time, there were white students. There wasn't a lot of Latinos in choir when I was growing up in Mattawa. I began to be the first one. And then it was interesting because I was a star athlete in the football program. Then it was cool to see other football players or other Latinos join choir. So I noticed that impact, and it was actually really nice, that people just more, it's like anything. You see somebody that looks like you doing something, somebody else will try it, that looks like you. And that was a good impact. But yeah. And so when we come fast forward to working for a corporate America, it was interesting. I was already just on my own taking voice lessons from a voice coach out of West Seattle.
Was it opera at the time?
Yes, opera. Yep.
So how did you settle on opera?
Just because of as a child, as a teenager, for some reason, opera just hit me. I guess because I always go back to when I first saw opera as like 12, 13 years old. I remember, seeing a PBS special of Les Mis, and a tenor just singing.
Yeah, the three tenors. Did you see them?
Just in video. I didn't see in person, but you bet. Of course, I saw all their shows on video. But it was just something, how it just made me feel. It made me feel like relevant in this world. It made me feel just something that important, just some self-importance. I guess that's the kind of emotion that I feel, that I felt every time I hear opera. Obviously, you start earning money and you're going, hey, some people, I don't know, they do other things with their money. I decided to get a private voice coach.
But growing up, did you sing, or I'm sure you were exposed to, Mexican folk songs, and did your father sing, or did others in the family?
My father was instrumental in hearing mariachi and folk Mexican music. I worked in the fields, so anytime the weekends from school, summer, I'm working in the fields. So that's what you hear. I would sing in the orchards. I would yell in the orchards, and that's what you hear. So yeah, you bet. I was exposed to it through, when I was a kid. My dad that's how he woke us up. Like at 6:37 in the morning, he would blast the radio and sing at the top of his lungs, the song. And we were like, oh my gosh. And, but it, every time he did that, it was funny. I remember my dad is so happy singing that music.
So how old were you when you actually decided to make opera singing a career? And is it like a traditional age where people end up, or do they start?
No, I'm a little older. But where I'm connecting in my prime, it's actually it's perfect timing. It's weird. So others have had they're a lot younger when they start in private voice lessons. In private voice lessons, they're a lot younger, or developing the skill of memorization, and as well as the different types of arias, because you from German to French.
So how old were you?
So I began to develop that in college. So I was at 19, 20 years old. So when I was in music school at Central Washington, I was way behind to what everybody else was in theory. And it was because of that, because it was, I would ask, I go, how do you know all this theory already? How do you know the conducting already? How do you know the time signatures? Well, I've been taking private lessons since I'm 10 years old, 9 years old, many of them. I mean, right. I'm probably the majority. So then that's kind of when I knew, like, oh my gosh, okay. And so that is a huge game changer. It's because you're talking about, especially as they teach you solfege. Solfege is a way of knowing the notes on the piano through voice, through voice. Basically, you yourself, through vocal practice, know what the notes are on the piano through the sound.
What is that? Can you do something for us so we know what it sounds like?
So it's like do la se la fo la sol la fe. Those are ways where I know what a note is on the piano, but by singing it, I can do it. So does that make sense? So when I'm reading the music, I can kind of gauge where the note is in the key.
So when you really started doing this professionally, I mean, you were competing for roles in Europe, the US, I mean, everywhere in the world.
So I've been, so I tried out for the Carmen production at the Tacoma Opera. I tried out for the Seattle Opera Frida production. So all of this is, that's what I'm doing now. I begin to perform basically pretty much in my own productions. I would produce my own concerts. That's how I began to start. And the reason is I got some mentorship from an amazing tenor from Germany. Through travel, through working for the cruise travel industry. And he told me, Jose, I wouldn't just go and try out first. I wouldn't do that. Because if you do and you get in, you have no influence. People won't know you. Communities won't care about you. And he said, if I had it over again, I would go perform in communities first and just go around, get people to know you, and have them judge you for themselves if they like you as a person. Obviously, if you have a voice, if you're pretty good, great. But he said, if you can establish that community presence first, then get into the opera, you'll have followers. And so when you have followers, people who just go to your events, then that's influence. And then you're not just another tenor. And so I appreciate that advice.
That's pretty good advice.
Yeah. And so that's what I did. And when I began to do my recitals, that's where I would go, as they might know, that's why I would go to different parts of Eastern Washington, a lot of different cities, develop the community, expose it, have them get to know me, and just grow it that way.
You're controlling your destiny, basically.
Yes. And that's what that's what he basically said, if he could do it over again.
And also with your brothers and sisters helping you along the way, right?
I think one of the biggest things of the success of each sibling was, bottom line, we are here to fulfill each other's dreams. that was one of the goals of our older siblings, is that every single sibling in our family, whatever your dream is, everybody's going to surround it and make it happen. They're involved. I think one of the aspects why the community outreach in regards to all these endowments that have been established is also a way to help give back into the community, and channeling it. And so how do you channel it? Well, why not channel it so it's helping other Latinos?
You guys as a family have created an endowment at Eastern, right?
Eastern and at Central Washington and at Columbia Basin College, and then now at Wenatchee Valley College.
And what does that endowment do?
So those endowments, what they do is once they're funded, and we're very lucky, they're all funded, and so through a lot of work, a lot of fundraising. But what they do is they support financially a student, in two of them specifically that want to study the arts. Yeah, and they have to come from a farm working background.
Wow.
The other two, one at Eastern is more, it could be any discipline, that any education that the student would like to do. And then unfortunately, or not fortunately, I think at Central Washington it's athletic based. So but you know, it's actually good too, because it tells the college that they need to find a Latino who's athletic. Mm-hmm. And it gives them a full ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so it really helps, you know, kind of everybody needs incentive. Let's be honest, right? You know, and so that's an incentive for a university to go out. We need to, you know, to try harder to find someone with that specific background, with that talent.
Right.
So speaking of hard, so when you started your own productions and you started to do your own thing, is that when you started Encanto Arts?
Correct.
So that's the genesis of it, and it's become so much more.
Yes, it has. Yeah, to what it is now. You know, it's weird though. What it is now is where I wanted it to go. So I always dream of the next production. So I always put myself into it in my dreams.
So what's the breadth of the kind of productions you're doing?
So it is within a 40-piece orchestra and a 20-piece choir. So that's huge. That's the full extent of Encanto Arts now. And then as well with the soprano. That right there is where it's at, and that's where it's going to go.
So when did you start actually going out there and creating your own performances? And then when did you start with the creation of Encanto Arts too?
Yeah, so it really started about 9 years ago. Yeah. I decided that I wanted to pursue this career, basically, even still working full time. So, and then I said, you know what, I need. I'm going to start with a small 4-piece orchestra, 4 or 5. So it's really started small, and it really just from there you add another instrument, you add more and more and more and more. So and when I would do the beginning, it started over in Eastern Washington. So I would do, you know, I started in Richland, went to Wenatchee, Quincy areas. I would do these small performances, as some were at the high school theaters, or others were maybe at a winery that were like, hey, you want to do something? Yeah, I was like, sure.
Usually the best stories were the worst incidents. So what was the roughest kind of venue you played where you go like, this is bullshit, I can't do this anymore? Or if you ever did that? But what was like?
There was one, yeah. It was in SeaTac. kind of like around their SeaTac, and it was four string or 4-piece and piano and vocals, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was really bad, really bad. I remember my sister telling me, okay, you will never do this again.
Well, what did the audience think?
Well, there was, first of all, no audience, really,
Oh, okay.
right? So I think, you know, when you're in this business, that's a huge gauge of what's going on, right? So,
Yeah, I would say so.
But it sounds like you really reached out or targeted those communities of color, and particularly Latino communities.
I did, and again, it just came because I was going off that advice. I really was. And that's what's amazing. I tell people sometimes, I've said this story and they're kind of like, wow, it was a white German guy, passing down knowledge, but I tell them that is the institution of music, right? It's because we were both interested in the same thing.
Okay. So what are the shows like now? What's the scale of the shows? How many people show up?
So like last Saturday, 740 people showed up.
Wow.
Yeah. So
where did you play?
It was at the Highline Performing Arts Center with the Northwest Symphony. And so the symphony had 60 musicians.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So the previous show to that was the Wenatchee Symphony, and the theater. It was at the Performing Arts Center downtown. That was full. It was, full theater with 65 musicians, artists on stage. So it really is growing to that. I think because also the music is getting better. I'm collaborating with directors of symphonies now. I collaborate with 3 directors now. Those things help a lot, that they believe in your musicianship, your voice, and they believe in what I can bring to their seasons.
So can people see your performances like on YouTube or somewhere?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, if you go to my Facebook and YouTube, you can look up. You'll see a lot of videos of concerts that are beginning.
And is it under Encanto Arts?
Encanto Arts, or my name, Jose Iniguez Tenor, as well.
Okay. Encanto Arts, the mission. Talk about the mission.
Yeah. So the mission really is kind of what the work was happening in the beginning, was going to some of the rural areas of the state of Washington and doing these presentations. So, but what we've done is, because of the endowments, we're actually able now to bring in the universities to do these productions. And so we now, what the goal is turned into, it's more about promoting, producing art, culture, and education. That's really now the mission of what it's grown to. And it's also grown from within the state of Washington and anywhere, just because we've been requested to perform, which we did in Alaska, Fairbanks. We went to like Wisconsin. Actually, next year we go into the University of Loyola in Chicago to do a concert with their orchestra and choir.
So you're the producer, the performer, the stage manager. I mean, you've got your hands in it all.
I have kept control of the song selection, as well as how the program is portrayed minute by minute. So the script manager, basically, because I always think that you're telling a story, and I want to make sure that I have control of that story.
I have a few friends that are in the opera world, and it's a pretty cutthroat business.
It is.
And once you're in. It's like what he said, you're kind of part of that group. So right. It's hard enough for people of color to break into opera, right? I mean, you have to be stellar to get in. What are your counterparts in the sort of the traditional world of opera think of what you've accomplished?
They're first of all, they're amazed. They because they do ask me. They go, "How are you doing this?"
I
You
can
know,
imagine.
so I tell them, I go, "Man, it's like anything. You start small, just start small, and you slowly, build it. And it is about collaboration because you're establishing subscriber lists. You're building this brand in a way where now parents they will bring their kids to see me. So that is kind of what is beginning to occur. Some of my friends who are sopranos as well, they performed the Seattle Opera, the Portland Opera, and they're beginning to ask to be in my productions. And
Mm.
so and of course because of the style of music, some of them really don't get to perform bolero. Uh,
Explain bolero.
and so bolero it comes from a more Caribbean style of romantic music, kind of ballady music, but it has a little bit more swing to it.
Does it still have the same operatic range and power?
Yes, yes. So that's the beauty of the bolero is that it allows the singer to have more room, actually, way more, even further than opera, because opera you still have to be in time with because you're dealing with a symphony.
So you
Uh,
really have taken this kind of out of the box, moving away from what's been the traditional, you go work for a company to you are the company and you're doing
yeah,
your own thing.
yeah. I
So
had
the
to be an
Taylor
entrepreneur.
Swift of opera.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I think there's a potential. It could go there. I think, I'm a person that really believes in diversity. I believe that um, this level of music right now, sometimes to a lot of people, is out of touch. It can be out of touch for them. I
Well, it's
try.
out of touch for the audience too. I mean, who shows up at those things? It's just not. It's not a cross section of what America is.
I think
No.
you look at the elite are
Yeah.
the ones that get to go to that.
Yes,
But
yes.
and I've
So
gone
I'm
to your
trying.
performances and you're bringing it to the
Yeah.
everyday person.
Exactly, and that's what I'm the way I go about that really is. I believe people who like really good music, if they like opera or classical music, and I'm dealing with a symphony, they're going to come anyway.
Yeah.
So now that made it easy for me in regards for that audience, right? So what makes it harder for me is now to really try to get the more general public or other people that wouldn't think that they would go to that to come to it. And so that's where a bolero does help. You really can start talking about certain composers that people listen to all the time. Juan Gabriel is probably one of the biggest bridges from mariachi or Mexican traditional music to orchestra and symphony.
So where can people see your next upcoming performances? I mean, I think
So
people are probably
the,
excited to actually experience this.
yeah, so the next performance will be at the Teatro Hidalgo in downtown Colima City. That'll be in November 1st.
That's a little far for our audience to go. So
Is it
Then
on YouTube?
we will have it recorded, so there will be
Okay.
clips that will come out and things like that to make sure people see what a beautiful European theater they have in downtown Colima City. But also in Washington, my next concerts will be until June. So I have June that will be here in the city of Pasco. So that will be with the Mid Columbia Symphony and the Mid Columbia Master Singers. And then from there, I go to Spokane in early September with Eastern Washington University Orchestra and Choir. And then from there, I go to Chicago, the encantoarts.org. It'll have all the anything for social media on that page. But you can just go to Jose Iniguez tenor. If you look that up, my YouTube page comes up as well. Yeah. But no, the reason why the spring, it's because I'm now a full-time teaching artist at the Seattle Opera.
Ah.
I just signed a contract with them last month, and so it was pretty special for me. I never signed a contract from a major opera company before. To be honest with you, I started crying. Even though, I mean, it's good money, but it's not like, a director at a corporate, company, right? But it was a living, and the fact that I can say that I get paid to perform and be an artist is pretty amazing.
Your father.
Yeah.
I know that, he probably was wondering what to do with you when you decided that, okay,
Oh, yeah.
Dad, I want to be an opera singer. And he's probably saying, yeah,
and some other
what's wrong with you? Yeah, some other Spanish words that are like, yeah. So,
Yeah.
But did the two of you finally kind of reach?
We did. Yeah, it was many years later. He was so stern, he wouldn't go to any performances at all. So, it wasn't until I actually performed at Benaroya Hall, and then he came and he finally said, "Man, yeah, you're doing a good job. I'm proud of you." So I guess you don't know sometimes the impact until you hear it. Of the influence that someone like your father, that that type of character puts onto you until they tell you that they're proud.
Right.
And so it affected me for a little bit. I actually just was like, man, oh gosh, I didn't know it was gonna feel that good.
Did you finally feel like, okay, I pleased him?
Yeah. I think what it did is it made me feel like all this time and effort was worth it.
Listen, good luck in Mexico, and let's keep tabs on how things are going here in the future. And congratulations on achieving your dream and making your dad happy, and really reaching out to the community to really share with them and educate them, but also to entertain them with opera and bolero. Thanks, Jose.
The Chino Y Chicano podcast is available on your favorite podcast provider.
You can watch the video version on YouTube. And Converge Media, a leading producer of culturally relevant content in the Pacific Northwest. And we leave you with Jose Iniguez performing with Mariachi Wenatchee.
La Virgina tiene pena y dolor. La Virgina no conoce el amor. Dicen que alguien ya vino y se fue. Dicen que pasa la vida soñando con él. Dicen que pasa la vida soñando con él.